want to do is give you a quick overview of how I would think about setting up Monarch. And this is the first video of a series in which I'm hoping to build upon this current environment I've set up that's very basic into a more complex individual and eventually couple. The reason I'm doing this is I've used Monarch for over 10 years, or I should say, I've used Monarch and Mint and other budgeting apps, and I hope to share with you some of the things I've learned over that time so it helps you with your personal finances. So, what I've done here is set up a demo environment. As I mentioned, this is a very simplistic account. Just to think of this in some type of conception, you have a cash account, which is a Chase checking account. You have a small retirement account, as in theory, this individual is beginning to save. And then you also have a credit card, which has a number of transactions over the last year that is set up to reflect typical spending habits of somebody that is just, let's say starting off in their career, so a little bit lower on the income side. But what I'm hoping to do here primarily is to show you how to set up Monarch in a very simple way so that you can track your personal spending in a way that makes sense to you, and so you're not confused about where you are in a given month or a given year. So when I go into the budgeting app after I've loaded in all these transactions, this is the default in terms of what Monarch sets you up with to begin. And I do like some of this in terms of how they are thinking about it. So you have under the expenses, fixed expenses, you have flexible expenses, and then you have some non-monthly. But for me, what I found when I was at this stage is just simplifying this even further really allows you to understand where you are with your spending on a regular basis and not try to have all these different categories that you're trying to create budgets for. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and take out most of these categories and simplify this into really just a fixed category, which again, I do like, but just having my rent and utilities as the primary fixed costs, as well as some additional things I've included like subscriptions, and then really just bundling all of these different personal items into just one line item of personal spending. So to do this, you go into the settings and you can toggle into the different categories here. This enables you to edit things exactly how you see fit. So I'm going to spend some time cleaning this up, and then I'm going to walk you through exactly what I did, and hopefully you'll see how even simplifying this further can create a really good foundation for a personal budget. We're back now, and you can see I've worked to clean up this whole space, and I'll walk you through exactly how I got here. But first, the important thing that I did before anything was Monarch has, if you go to settings up there in the corner, two different types of budget systems. Flex budgets is what they default to now. Although I think flex budgets, after playing around with it, it really just gets you to the same place that I get with the category budgets. So to me, category budgets, in order to get here, is the first thing to do. Again, I just find it more simplistic. You can certainly play around with flex budgets, but to get to this view, the first thing is to set up category budgets. This will then transform the space to look as it does here. But as you saw in my last screen share, I had a ton more categories here. So what I did was going into the categories here, I went through and essentially disabled everything except for a handful of categories. And really, the goal here is to just simplify this budgeting process as much as possible. So, going through for each of these, you would click on the category. Right now, here, for example, it says activate, it would say disable. If you have any transactions that are under one of these categories, you will have to switch it to another category. And so for me, what I did is I just created this personal spending group, and then underneath it, just a personal catch-all bucket. And I'll show you back on the budget page how this functions, but for all these different categories. And you can see there's so many here that they start you off with. I disabled all of these. Some of these you can't, like on categorize, you can't disable, which is fine. And I just assigned almost all of them into personal. And then for the ones that I didn't, I have these categories here, which are really for my fixed costs. So if I go back into budgets, you can see how this all comes alive. So for income, here I have my paychecks. So if I click in here, you'll see each month I'm getting my 2 paychecks. Each is $2,000 from my fictitious company, Acme Corp Payroll. And that is where I'm setting my monthly spending. So I have 4,000 a month that I'm getting, and that is being allocated across all these different categories. So most important, when I think back to when I was at this level of income, it was understanding what my fixed costs were, right? So your fixed costs are such a big portion at this income level, and I think the gross income, if you do the math on 4,000 a month in net paychecks, is something like 60 to 70K in income. So much of your budget goes to these fixed costs. So it's critical to put in things like rent, your utilities. I do have groceries here for right now. Groceries you could kind of think of in different ways, and I'll come back to that. But ultimately, what we're looking to do is lay out the things that I'm paying a cost. And actually, as I'm thinking about this, what I'm going to do is, and this will help show you, I'm going to move groceries actually into personal spending here. And that way we have really just things that I am, no matter what, going to be charged for on a monthly basis. So rent, utilities, my phone that I have to pay for, a couple subscriptions that I have in here. Like this might be if you have a subscription to like the New York Times or something else that you're paying for, fitness or the gym, like if I have a gym membership. And I really like this because if I am trying to cut things on a monthly basis, these are the things that I first look for, right? To say, like, okay, within my subscriptions, if I'm looking to, try to cut a little bit of spending, if this were, say, $60, $70 because I've signed up for a bunch of different things, maybe that's the first place I look. And then this personal spending really just becomes a very simplistic way of keeping track of, am I spending more than I'm making? And where am I in the month, right? And the reason I think this catch-all works as a starting point is because your monthly expenses are really not always the same. You're going to have months where you spend more, you're going to have months where you spend less. And as I'm looking here, because I moved the groceries, actually, this is a good example. What I would always do back when I had this type of setup is I'd always be toggling this number right here, right? So if any of my fixed costs change, like they go up, they go down, this is the number ultimately I'm looking at. So I just moved the grocery category into personal. So I would always just zero this out, and that allows me to see, the total personal spending budget I have. And then I put that number back in here. So this is an easy way to say, okay, like where am I in my spending this month? All my fixed expenses have been paid. And then I have $2,260 to spend outside of this on everything else. And I've already spent, $600 of that. So this is, hypothetically, the demo environment, it's on the 25th of the month. So in this month, I mean, a little bit unrealistic, but this would be saying, oh, I'm doing great. Like I have $1,600 left roughly, and only a week left in the month. So I'm actually doing really good right here. If this was above, like you can, very quickly see that maybe you're overspending for the month. So again, the point here is really to just keep this as the foundation. And what I'm going to do in subsequent videos is add in a couple different categories and try to make it realistic as to tracking your expenses and tracking where your spending is going, but not overcomplicating this budget setup. So Ultimately, I hope this is helpful. I hope this gives you a starting point in how to think about setting up Monarch and setting this up in a way where it's super easy to track. Again, I do think that simple is better. There's a lot of features in here that I'm going to go through in other videos as well. Some of the things like reports and cash flow, which ultimately can be great tools to see. Again, to me, the big question that I'm always asking myself is, where am I spending, and am I spending more than I'm making, right? That to me is always the big question I'm thinking about. So hope you follow along, and I'll have some more videos coming after this.